43 seconds. Well, okay, so got the 9060 XT running on Blender 5.2. So at least we got this thing going now. If you have issues opening Blender 5.2, I would just clean reinstall your drivers and disable your iGPU. That seems to be an issue they've had lately. Guys in the Discord have been talking about that too. And I think I had preferences from Blender 5.1 that came across and also were causing crashes. Not entirely sure why that would matter because really I don't change that much for these benchmarks, but it apparently did cause issues, so I think we're rolling now. So you made the 5070 benchmarks a year ago, and it seems NVIDIA is still the king of renders for Blender. Has AMD made any improvements recently? Um, you know, other than if we see some new information tonight, I don't believe so, not in Blender at least. I still don't think they have the newest versions of HIP RT, but I'm gonna go back to the spreadsheet here actually. So the last test I had for the 9060, should probably highlight these. I'm gonna zoom in too. I know it's really low resolution on the stream. So the 9060 XT, yeah, so people had warned about this in the Discord as well, but it looks like there's actually some performance hit that's come along with AMD, and I don't know if it's all of Blender 5.2 and 5.1, but the classroom is already kind of starting off not so good. I got 43 seconds this time, so I'm going to resort these and then highlight the new ones, but here's today's. I'll put them in yellow. 43 seconds, and it looks like my last one on the 9060 XT was Blender 4.5, basically a year ago, and that one was 36 seconds. So it's not looking so good at this point. But let me try a heavier scene and see what happens. Zoom this in too. There you go. But yeah, in general, NVIDIA is still way easier to deal with at this point. So just gonna open up Barbershop here next. We'll just kind of keep rolling. NVIDIA definitely wants you to pay up for more VRAM. So I would still say if you're on a budget or you do a lot of gaming, AMD is still a really competitive value if you're not only using Blender. And I want to get into testing other apps, especially Unreal Engine, a lot more. And I think AMD is probably relatively better on Unreal Engine than it is, at least in Blender. So I wouldn't say like completely avoid AMD, but yeah, if you're just a Blender user primarily, NVIDIA is the easiest answer for speed. And if you pay up, you can get the VRAM, but AMD and Intel are better options for high VRAM with slower GPUs on them, really. Okay. Hi, I've been following your channel. I'm thinking of buying a 9070 or a 5070. Which one would you recommend? Could you chat? My English isn't very good, so I can't understand what you're saying. Yeah. I can also chat in there. That's fine. 5070 is a lot faster than the 9070 XT for Blender. So if you're only using Blender, then yeah, I would say let's just let's just stick with the 5070. The 4 gigabytes of VRAM difference may or may not matter to you. So it really kind of is a hard decision. And the way that they price the GPUs, it really is just to make you have to decide. That's why NVIDIA doesn't put more VRAM on their cheaper cards, because they know they don't have to. And so they force you into a corner of picking slow card with lots of VRAM for a reasonable amount of money, or a fast card with not quite enough VRAM, or middle of the road money. Otherwise, if you want to sell organs, you can get all of it. And so Intel and AMD, they really kind of give a nice middle ground. If you do want more VRAM and you don't necessarily need the highest end speed, there's at least options for that. Just replying to the chat here, this person requested that I also chat to them, which is awesome. Okay. So we got the barbershop running right now. I can also pull up. I'll probably use Task Manager for now. Pull up Task Manager too while these run, so you guys can see temperatures. And I know this has got to be super tiny on your screen because the resolution is so teeny tiny, but we're running this thing. It's been running for over a minute, and the 9060 XT is sitting at 47 degrees. So it's a large cooler on the thing. It runs really cool. It's doing well there. I understand about 60% what you're saying, but the 5070 is for Blender. I'll show you if I decide to buy it. Yes, yep. For Blender only, the 5070 is quite a bit faster than the 9070 XT. So it's kind of one of those things, like if you wanted to spend a few $100 more, then the 5070 Ti is way better. But then you just get into that slippery slope of basically budget creep up to infinity. I was just thanking you because I bought the 5070 over the 9070 XT. It performs better on Blender specifically, but for gaming, the 9070 XT is definitely better than the 5070, yes. So yeah, if you kind of have to know your use cases, but if you do a lot of gaming and Blender is just a little bit of a hobby on the side, I would go for the 9070 XT for sure, because the AMD will compete with the 5070 Ti, or be pretty close to it in gaming. So it is a much better value for gaming for sure. Okay. Well, barbershop got done finally. That was 3 minutes and 4 seconds. So I'm going to throw that in before I accidentally click off of it. So I'll just throw these in here real quick. What do you think about iGPUs, AMD iGPUs, like the Radeon 860M on the Ryzen AI 7 350? Sure, it will not run like desktop GPUs, but those laptops are slim and light, and they should work for small projects. Yeah, and the other nice thing about iGPUs is if you get the right ones that have unified memory, which those do, it can really free up your scene size and your textures, so you're not as dependent on VRAM. So if you get a lot of RAM on an iGPU, it can save some headaches, and it's going to render slow, but you're not going to have crashes for running out of memory. So there's definitely benefits, and the portability is great. But that's why I like the MacBook. I know most people won't touch them because they are expensive, and like even the M5 Max I got, it was $500 cheaper when I bought it than it is today. I mean, the prices came up that much in just a couple weeks right after they launched. But you know, having basically 30 plus gigs of effectively VRAM, it really just makes life easy. You don't have to stop and worry about VRAM on iGPUs. So for something portable and just to work on your scenes and you know for high poly sculpting and stuff like that, it's definitely a good option. Well, let's see. I think I missed a comment here. I was Team Red for 5 years because of the gaming price to performance, but then I saw your benchmarks and had to switch to NVIDIA because 3D software and Blender, etc., performs way better. Yes, NVIDIA is still the fastest, which honestly, if HIP RT was fully like properly implemented in Blender, I think it'd be a little bit different story. I think they still have something like 20 or 25% in theory of ray tracing performance that they could get out of Blender. But it's just it's a matter of implementing that, and the CUDA moat is there. There's been plenty of discussion in the past on these videos in the comments about whose fault it is that you know Blender's not running renders as fast, but either way you look at it, it's really comes down to the software is just not all the way implemented from what I can see. But I'm going to start up the Lone Monk here. This one will take a little bit. Yeah, and I can't imagine how far along in the stream I'll get tonight. Once I get through some of these tests, and who's ever in the comments can let me know if you guys want to skip like open data benchmark or anything. I'm just going to kind of go through my normal set of tests, but the new AMD GPUs do run, well, I say new like they came out this year. The newest AMD GPUs do run on Cinebench 2026, so we could also run that one. Obviously, that takes 10 minutes though, so we'll see. But if we have time after the 9070, I can throw in the Radeon Pro R9700 because it's really not a horrible price for 32 gigs of VRAM. I mean, I think they've crept up a lot. I want to say I bought mine for closer to $1,200, and now they're like $1,500. So, like everything else, they went up. But the biggest point of all of it is we kind of get a lot of VRAM now, a lot more than we used to. So it's not all bad out there, but prices are pretty awful. And then in the next, I don't know, next couple days, I did just pick up an RTX 5080. People have been asking for that since they came out too. And I finally just kind of bit the bullet and went and got one. So I'll be doing that too. But that's why you guys haven't seen videos come out as fast. I'm not into recycling content as much as some people are. I'm not as comfortable with that. So since there hasn't been a lot of new hardware, I haven't been testing as many things. Just kind of waiting and hoping for RAM to be available at least so that GPUs start coming out again. But it is what it is. So okay, so Lone Monk looks like we're about halfway done. And so I'll do a couple more of these streams. To be completely honest, I've kind of got tired of recording these things and editing and everything. So I'm going to try to mix in some extra live streams, and hopefully this connection figures itself out enough to at least run 720p. But I kind of like the live format more. So I'll try to find a way. I used to use an app called Speedify that would like splice networks together. But trying to run my Starlink and Verizon at the same time kind of turns into a headache as well. But I might have to go back and revisit that. Okay, this thing's just creeping along. Let's check the temperature. Yeah, 51 Celsius on the 9060 XT right now, right in the middle of the Lone Monk after about 3.5 minutes. So really not bad. It's a 3-fan. I want to say it's a Gigabyte 3-fan. So it's a pretty extreme cooler for a little tiny chip, but nice and quiet, nice and cool. And so, like, as you guys can see, these are not like record-setting fast GPUs, but at least under the $500 price, it's an okay way to get 16 gigs of VRAM. And in the past, I would have compared it to the 5060 Ti, but that one has basically come up to $600 on new markets, so that's kind of silly. All right, this thing's just about done. If you guys have any other questions as we kind of wait for these things to run, just go ahead and throw them in the chat. Obviously, we've got plenty of time. Okay, 4 minutes and 44 seconds for the Lone Monk. Obviously, the 9070 XT is a little bit more exciting to watch too because it is considerably faster. What did I say? 484. Just throw those in. Yep. Blender 5.2. 2026. There we go. All right, let's sort this one. The Lone Monk is the best because it's the hardest hitting one. Here's my old result. 276 seconds from a year ago. And the new result is basically 8 seconds slower. So very, very minor slowdown. We got to go back. Let's look at Barbershop too, because I bet you that's going to be a similar story. So this was the Barbershop numbers. And yep, just a little bit slower. So after an entire year and multiple Blender releases later, it looks like AMD GPUs are slightly slower. They're not faster on 5.2, but I think everybody, all the brands have similar results. So we'll kind of keep watching that when I make these other videos. And I need to remember, but when I test the 5080, it'd be good to go back and do like a 4.5 and then run 5.2 and see what they have too. Because my PC died, I do everything with my ThinkPad P50 with the M2000M GPU, and it's heavy. Yeah, that's. I mean, everything pre-ray tracing cores is definitely gonna feel a little slow now, but as long as it works, you can do. I mean, you can do a lot. You can do a lot in Blender with really not having the fastest stuff. Okay. Well, we'll go run Scanlines real quick just to have new numbers on everything. Oop, I loaded the wrong one there. Do 3.3. There we go. Make sure everything's in there. Yep. So normally the next one I'll do is the viewport test. I need to find a better scene that everybody has, but I'm really curious to see if they fixed the viewport problems that I was seeing in 5.0 and 5.1. And I think it's something to do with curves, but I had curves in my benchmark scene that I use for viewport testing, and in the past, in the 4.5 to pre 5.0 blenders, it really didn't seem to matter. All the curves are disabled for the viewport. I'm not running shaders or anything, and the something at 5.0 and higher just completely killed the viewport performance. So I'm trying to decide what that was, but I think I'm going to have to either create and distribute a viewport test or just find a good common one that everybody can download as well. But once this thing gets done here on the Scanlines, we'll go do that one next. I think that one is probably the one that people really want to see the most, because most people don't spend hundreds of hours a week rendering. It's usually you're actually working in Blender. So we'll go look at that one, but viewport tests are really hard to come up with because you have to have a scene that's heavy enough that you actually get a result, and you have to have one that's light enough that, you know, everything's not just 2 frames per second. So it's really hard to balance that. I think what I'm going to do is design a scene just for the viewport test that basically has like a 360 FPS setting on the timeline, so that you would get a really big range of potential results effectively. So, I mean, comparing 5 frames per second to 7 is okay, but it's not very specific information, I guess, is kind of what I'm saying. All right. Well, this one's almost done. And we got 48 degrees on the 9060 XT. I really like that this GPU only has one 8-pin power connector too. Reminds me of the old days. Okay, that one got done. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Okay, so, yep, same exact thing. Both of these right here. It is 8 seconds slower on Scanlines as well. And that's going from Blender 4.5 in this month of 2025 versus right now. So after a year, we are slightly slower, like about 6% slower. So that's not exciting, but at least we know where everything's at. I like the viewport benchmark idea. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to design a scene, and all the ones, like, people suggest ones you can get from Blender and so on, but if they don't have an animation, it's really hard to control the benchmark. Kind of like, same thing in my opinion with gaming benchmarks. I find it difficult to not believe the results, but it's hard because if you're just running the game, you have to just get a really long average. Otherwise, it doesn't really mean anything. So, okay. So now this scene, some of you know, some of you don't. This one is just a scene that I made. I have posted a like finished render of this animation on my channel quite a while ago. But it just works really good for this viewport test, or it did until the mysterious curves problem came up. But as you can see, we have our GPU selected. I have HIPRT checked on, which probably doesn't matter for the viewport test. And then I have Vulkan selected. In general, I don't go back to OpenGL unless I have a crash somewhere. So we're just going to basically hit play on this. It's very simple testing wise. And so you could see probably poorly on your screen. The very top left of the screen, there's this little red text here, but it says we're getting about 6.4 frames per second. And so once the scene restarts, it kind of like bounces around a lot, and then it comes to an average. So I think our average is about 6.4 FPS, which all in all isn't bad. Let me turn on, I'm going to pause this. Let me turn on the scene statistics here. So this frame here, this file is about 3.15 million vertices, and there are a considerable amount of trees. So let me just leave the camera here quick. And this is maybe not a terrible demo either, but here's the scene. So there's tons and tons of trees, and there's all of these like grass and leaf objects on the ground. And so the scene is like poorly optimized. It's a fairly heavy scene for not having like extreme textures or anything like that. But you can see even on, like, I'm using remote desktop and I'm streaming and all of that, you can see I can still move around in here fine. And really nobody would be animating with all of this background stuff turned on anyway. So let's just say if I turn off the scene, I mean, it's really fine. There's really not a lot of lag. So that's the other thing about viewport tests. You got to be careful because probably most of the time in the viewport is going to be animating or building the scene, and you're realistically going to turn off a lot of the heavy stuff for doing that anyway. But I'll let this start up one more time. But yeah, basically we get 6.4 frames per second, and you could see you can watch your animations back pretty smooth even with heavy ones. And then I'll show you this here. I have frame dropping turned on, so it's not playing every frame, it's skipping them to keep the timeline moving. And so that's the other thing. There's not a lot of reason to play every frame either for playback. So yeah, but I think we'll record 6.4 for this one, and I'm curious to see. I don't remember. Let's pull up the old spreadsheet here. And it looks like we have our first good news of the day. So let's just go in here and update this. Let's update this price. That's one thing on these spreadsheets. Ignore the price a little bit because basically none of these are true anymore. But I think this GPU is more like $450 now or something like that. Honestly, pretty wild. But I'm going to highlight this. So my previous results from July of last year are these two here. I'll put them in yellow. And then this new one is in green. So basically, we actually got 0.7 frames per second faster in the year. So viewport, it looks like we did get improvements. And I don't know if they just fixed bugs with the Vulkan backend, and maybe the laggy stuff I'm seeing is with the MacBook mainly, and I don't know, maybe Intel, which I'll talk about at some other time. But yeah, it looks like slightly faster in, well, actually it'd be quite a bit faster. It's about 12% faster in the viewport, so that's actually something good. Could you do a viewport benchmark with multiple rigs? It's basically an animation only issue. Right now working on an animation with multiple rigs, but I have to hide half of them to get 23 frames. Oh, I get you. Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely do that. The other thing to keep in mind with that too is use that frame dropping feature for your playback. if you don't know about that, it can make a huge difference. So like on this one, if I switch it back to play every frame, and it's just down here on the timeline, you go to this playback drop down in the bottom left of my screen. I guess it's on the top left of your timeline. And you go to play every frame, and then when I play this, it'll actually load every frame and play it no matter what. And so you can see here, it's still 6.4 frames per second, but it's showing you every single frame. So as long as it takes to load those, it really slows it down. So instead of that, just use the frame dropping and then play it. And it'll basically skip frames so you can get the idea of what it looks like. You just don't see all of the in-between frames. So for animating, that's a huge, that's a huge setting to help with. But I'm gonna pause that one. We'll call that good for now. If you guys have any more viewport questions for this one, let me know. But I'll probably have to start working on a new scene anyway. So I'm gonna close that, and then I'm gonna run the open data benchmark again. I'll pull up my task manager. Yeah, frame dropping is huge. I mean, if you don't see all the frames, but you don't really need to either. So I'm gonna run, well, it looks like 5.2 is out. So I'm gonna start that. It's gonna have to download these though. I don't have them yet. So I don't think this will take too super long. But it looks like they released the 5.2 version of Blender Open Data Benchmark. So I haven't seen any results for it yet, so that's good. Also for the multiple rig question, you don't have to do it now or ever even. It was just a suggestion. No, yeah, it's something to try. I think that makes sense. I think most people's scenes probably have multiple characters and some sort of background. So it would definitely make sense. Okay, I'm going to let this download. I will be back in just about 50 seconds. Okay, I'm back. My money only allows me to buy a 9060 XT. Hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with this GPU. You know, I'm obviously I have all the options for hardware that I want, and really realistically, if we compare it to high-end GPUs from like 5 years ago, it's more competitive than you would expect for what they call low end now. So there's a ton you can do with this thing. I mean, I've seen people make pretty crazy stuff on 12-year-old laptops with really slow iGPUs. But it's better just to be able to do it anyway. Like, you could either learn Blender and build scenes, or you could just not. So there's definitely no shame in it at all. Oh man. Of course my wonderful Starlink is running at about a megabyte per second here. I tried to call the internet providers to get fiber out to my house, and the price was going to be just a little bit too much. Despite GPU and RAM prices, we're in the golden age of individual / indie 3D art creation. No, I completely agree. I imagine that there are groups of people out there building things that they probably don't even know each other. Like in my mind, I picture basically like a virtual studio where if you got maybe 5 or 10 people together, you could make some really, really cool stuff, games or shows or whatever you wanted. But yeah, I mean, the fact that we can do any of this stuff on a single desktop in our own house is pretty awesome. Unexpected error. Well, that's wonderful. I guess I'll submit the error. Okay, so no 5.2 for us. They must have just put that onto the list and it is not working. I'll try one more time and make sure. Yep, it's broken. Clear cache and retry. Oh, now it's now it's bigger than it was. Okay. Maybe it'll work. Yeah, I checked just today and they didn't even have version 5.2 for the open data benchmark yet. So I really want to see how it runs, but I know 5.1.1 worked. Yeah, this is going to take too long. We'll go back to 5.1. I don't anticipate a lot has changed, but I'll have to just kind of come back and try to get 5.2 to download. That's telling me I don't have this one either, really. Yeah, the other thing that's weird is the open data benchmark and actual frame renders don't really line up very well usually. So I think it's a good tool to run the open data benchmark, but I'd be really interesting. It'd be interesting to know why they're so different. But someone in the Discord at one point had kind of analyzed why it might be different. And some of the brands of GPUs seem to run faster with the command line that Open Data uses. So instead of actually opening and running Blender with drawing the viewport, the scores change. So I think without having to load as much stuff, some of the GPUs get an advantage in Open Data Benchmark. So that is a fairly interesting piece of information, but okay. Now let's see if this one will work. Not entirely sure why 5.1 didn't work because I have run those before. There we go. Now it's listing devices. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's start the benchmark because last time I ran this on the 9060 was a long, long time ago. Okay, so it'll burn through these here now. Yeah, I got a great idea the other day that I would go see what the old RTX Titan was going for, hoping it would be like a couple $100s. And I looked on eBay and it looks like people want about $800 for the, what is it now? 7 years old? 8 years old? RTX Titan. So, not really a good deal. But I guess if you want 24 gigs of VRAM, that's one way to get it. Okay. Start up the last one here. Really, I think if you use something like Blender Flamenco for running multiple computers, you're probably going to have similar results to the Open Data Benchmark, more so than frame rendering, because it's going to run it in the command line. So I think this test is probably pretty close to render farm speed results, since it won't actually open Blender when you run those. Okay, now we got some information. So I'm going to grab a picture of these, go see my spreadsheet. So let's see what I ran these on. Open Data Benchmark, back when. Looks like it was the same time. So yeah, a year ago. So these are about 830, 606, and 457. Sort these totals from largest to smallest. So here's our two new numbers and our old number here in the green. And interestingly, so this was today's was, yeah, Blender 5.1. I will run 5.2, but it seems to not be working completely yet. But Open Data Benchmark does show a 324 point improvement, which is about a fifth, so pretty good. Looks like about 20% faster in Open Data Benchmark over the last year for AMD, so that's good news. So that's why we run so many different tests too, because frame rendering is one thing, but Open Data Benchmark tells a little different story than that, and viewport testing is obviously most of the time you spend. And AMD and Intel and really Mac, they all kind of, they look a lot better when you look at those numbers instead of just frame rendering. So there's always a whole picture you have to build to decide on, you know, what does fast actually mean. But okay, well, good. So that's the normal tests I do. I don't have Unreal Engine figured out yet. I'm gonna probably do a whole separate set of streams and stuff. I finally like got into it and started figuring out how to try to benchmark it. There's some advanced performance tools that you can run, so I'm gonna start doing more of that, but that'll kind of be its own topic, I guess. So I'll probably, I don't know, do you guys want to see Cinebench? It's 10 whole minutes. We probably would be better off just switching over to the 9070. But if nobody has a strong opinion here in the next few seconds, I'll just shut down the test bench and go swap it out. So I'll wait for just a second so you guys can throw your opinions in if you want to. I'll just kind of start getting the spreadsheet set up with a new line for everything. In the meantime, this one will, so the 9070 XT will go a lot faster. Sorry if you guys can hear some sounds above me. My family is upstairs and my kids are jumping around, so my house isn't falling apart, so don't worry about it. But okay, no questions. All right, I will shut it down and go swap it out. And I don't know if you guys saw those the new test bench, but it's a lot easier to deal with than an actual desktop case, so it does not take long to switch a GPU. And we'll see if it just pops right off and doesn't have to do anything with drivers. Shouldn't. Get all this stuff set up. All right. So I'm going to save that, and I'm just going to go shut down everything on this thing. Okay, I'm going to go swap the GPUs out real quick. Should be back in like a minute. Okay, I'm back. Was wondering how you were going to change your GPU midstream until you said remote desktop. Yeah, people asked about remote desktop methods for benchmarking before, and I did a little bit of testing over time to make sure that it was not causing like worse numbers. But the whole network that I have here, the local network, is all 2.5 gigabit at the worst, and modern computers are so fast anyway. I mean, you see a little bit of lag on, like if you tried to play a game on remote desktop, it would look laggy, but the computer doesn't really work very hard to run remote desktop. So, yeah, it does make it nice because I've already got this thing back up and running again. So I'm going to pull up Task Manager just so you can see, well, kind of see. But the 9070 XT is installed. Shouldn't have to do anything with drivers. I'm going to close the Intel driver software because those are still open, and close Steam. I was also using Steam for a tool called Combo Bench because it would kind of measure bottlenecks in your system. But the last time I tried that, it was giving me problems. Okay. That's going to kick on. I'm going to go to Device Manager here and kill the iGPU again just to make sure it's not going to cause a problem. We'll just uninstall it. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can get Blender 5.2 to kick on right away without messing around with drivers. Okay, well, it's already getting further than it did earlier. So I'm going to pull this over to the side, and then we'll put Task Manager up on there for the temperature. I also like to use Task Manager instead of like the AMD's driver tools, because I think Task Manager is lightweight enough, it doesn't bother the benchmarks a lot. And really, we just want to know the GPU temperature. I mean, I'm not worried about like hotspot temps or anything like that. So, looks like my motherboard refused to turn off the iGPU. That's kind of funny, but we'll see. If we don't have crashes, it's not a problem. So I'm going to turn that off. Anyway, so here we are. 9070 XT is installed. Blender 5.2. And I'm running the HIPRT checkbox on. And we'll see if it renders here. What about hardware info? I think hardware info is a good tool. I think the only time I've had a problem with it is with my Threadripper. For some reason, it would cause crashes when I was dealing with it, but maybe they've updated it since then. But yeah, during benchmarking, I don't think hardware info is heavy enough on the system to cause a problem. But honestly, I would have to read more about how much of an issue is it for that, for bad benchmark results. I always like to use it when I'm really getting into the temps and like trying to CPU overclock and stuff like that, because it has so many sensors in there. So it's great for the information, but I don't really know how it affects benchmarks actually. But yeah, that's why I'm wary of using it on this system for testing, because it does load so much stuff. I don't want it to drain resources, you know what I mean? But if I was doing more in-depth CPU testing, I would probably use it. Okay, so Classroom, I got 22 seconds. I'm going to try to throw these in as fast as I can. I know it's not the most exciting to watch somebody sorting spreadsheets, but we want to know. So now I'm going to do this green color for new results here. And so, yep, same story. So slightly slower in 5.2 on the 9070 than we were a year ago in 4.4. But so Classroom, it was about 3 seconds slower. So Classroom's kind of too light of a test anyway, so let's just go to Barbershop. I imagine it's going to be It's going to be the same idea. We'll just open up the barbershop. Make sure that iGPU didn't turn back on. Looks like we're good to go. Render the image. Then, as you guys probably know, I always restart these once they load shaders and everything. So I always like to kill it the first time and then start again, because it gets rid of the extra loading that happens on the first run. So it looks like here it's going to build the BVH every time anyway, which is fine. But the reason I do it that way is because if you're going to render an animation, it's not going to reload shaders or optimize kernels on every single frame. So it would be an inaccurate result, in my opinion, to include that loading time for the first run on the actual results. So here, this won't take nearly as long as the 9060. But I think Barbershop is probably the best set of results I have for rendering time, because it is an odd resolution with a lot of objects, and it's heavy enough that I trust it's true. And the Lone Monk scene would be good, but as you guys may or may not know, I had run a bunch of my NVIDIA tests with the open shading language turned on, and that just destroys the render time. So I do still have to go back through all of those someday. And honestly, I might do them on live streams. Like I said at the beginning of this today, the loneliness of YouTube is a little hard to explain, but it's not quite the same. I mean, at least on a live stream, I feel like I'm talking to somebody, but recording and editing videos, it just feels like it's a different kind of work, I guess. But anyway, Classroom 9070 XT, we're going to round down to 1 minute and 36 seconds. 1 minute and 36. Go smallest to largest, okay? And then we're gonna go find our old guys here. So these, that one, and this one, looks like those are the most current. So we lost 4 seconds of speed. We're 4 seconds slower than this time last year. So from Blender 4.4 to 5.2, we went from 92 seconds for the barbershop to 96. So just around 4.7%, something like that, slower. And I think you'll see that if you watch other videos. I think you'll see that's true for everything. Blender 5 and higher is just slightly slower on cycles. I don't know if that'll be corrected or if it's just how it runs now. But let's go ahead and run the Lone Monk next. That one is here. Okay. Check our preferences. Looks like everything's good to go. Start it up. Kill it. I don't think these will change because building the BVH will happen every time, but just best not to change anything. And then for this one, I'll get the use graph over here for the GPU on Task Manager to go. Okay, so it looks like it's going to sit in the mid 40s for temperature, which is pretty good. Back in the GPU mining days, I was used to seeing 90-degree core temperatures and 105-degree memory temperatures, so anything under about 60 looks incredible to me. Okay, so this one does take a long time. Does anybody have ideas on like a good format to compare two GPUs? So one of the most common comments I get is, can you compare the 9070 XT to the 5070? And there's a couple pairings that people always ask about. If you guys are like I am, you're probably not only using it for Blender. So like what's the mix of use cases that people want to see to know if the VRAM matters more or the speed matters? So if you have ideas about like more in-depth videos of a direct comparison, send those to me too. Part of the struggle of doing this stuff is trying to decide if I'm giving something useful to people. So if you guys have ideas, then shoot them to me, and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. And this one's about done already. So much faster. Okay. 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Not too bad. Go ahead and sort that. And again, if you haven't heard, maybe you have, but turn off open shading language if you're testing with an NVIDIA GPU. It's basically um, like a custom shader setup that it doesn't need. So it'll make your results really, really weird if you turn it on. And I think it's only available for NVIDIA GPUs, but if you're not aware that you need to use it, then turn it off, because that's made all of these NVIDIA numbers pretty strange. But so back to this one, it looks like I think I had a newer result than that. Maybe not. Okay, so the Lone Monk one that I have, I think I had tested this and it didn't change in those 4 months. So in March of 2025, Lone Monk ran 137.5 seconds on the Lone Monk, and now it's 143. So a year and 4 months after launch, we lost just about 6 seconds, 5.5 seconds. So similar deal, a little bit slower than it was. And so like when we look at these, when we talk about the HIPRT version isn't up to date, in theory, these should be like 20 to 25% faster than they are, according to what I've been able to dig up. And so for whatever reason, it's not built into Blender yet. When I'm shopping for new hardware, I watch a bunch of benchmark videos, and the most common note I see is the VRAM only matters more for higher resolution gaming. So 12 gigs VRAM is medium settings. Yeah, for 2K gaming. 16 gigs for 2K high. Okay. And 32 for 4K. Yeah, I think it's probably more similar to running Blender than you would expect, because if you picture a game and how many tons of objects there are, all you're really doing when you change the resolution is you're loading all of those textures in a higher resolution as well. And game engines are really good at making it run fast. But yeah, the VRAM use does just come from loading higher textures. But I can tell you, because I use my 5090 for Blender and for games, I can tell you at 4K high or ultra, I think I rarely get over 20 gigs of VRAM. I would have to make sure to check that, and some games are better than others at optimizing, but that's probably not a bad rule of thumb. And so like if you wanted to play 4K but you have 16 gigs, you can definitely optimize it quite a bit to make it work. Okay, I'm going to switch to the last one here. Go to Scanlands. But yeah, I mean, like, especially in Blender, 16 gigs of VRAM is probably enough for basically everybody. I mean, yeah, you can use 32 gigs up, but if you optimize your stuff, it really, really shouldn't go that crazy. No, yeah, and I think your breakouts are pretty good for gaming. I don't think there's really no reason that a game should need 32 gigs of VRAM. I think that's obviously just bad optimizing, and we don't need to get into that whole argument. But um, game developers these days definitely know that they don't have to optimize very much because even the slowest computers are really, really fast. And so I don't know, they're good at selling GPUs and they're good at telling you this needs to be better and faster, but really the software just probably could use more work. And I think we'll probably see more of that in the future. But one of my favorite examples of um, unoptimized silliness is the game Conan Exiles, which is a survival game. And they had a big Unreal Engine update. It went from an older, I think, version 4 Unreal Engine to 5. And when they updated it, it was a free update, and all the textures were better, and the game ran faster on the new engine. But the file size went from 80 gigabytes down to 40. So they actually, for once in my life, I saw a developer like severely optimize the game, and it dropped the file size in half. So for whatever else you can say about Funcom, I was pretty excited. I thought that was pretty cool that they kind of went back through it in detail and dropped the file size. But that should be possible for any game. They sell early beta. Yeah, they do. Yep. If you can get somebody to buy it before you even have to make it or before you even have to release it, then yeah, why would you optimize it, I guess. Okay, this one was 1 minute and 25 seconds. 85. Sort that. Yeah, so like the the save effort side of me likes to have a lot of extra VRAM so I don't have to optimize anything. But I would say part of learning Blender should really be, figuring out optimization as much as anything else. Some of the big YouTubers have videos about just certain settings you can turn off and certain things you can turn down. You can't really see a difference in them, but they make render times go maybe 10 times faster or more. So 3D art is as much about cheating and tricks as it is of, actually learning the content. But all right. Well, we lost 1 second here on Scanlands. So green numbers here. I'll zoom in. I forget. I'm on 720p. Basically, we went from 84 to 85 seconds over the last year, so not really much change there, but overall, slightly slower at rendering now in 5.2 is the big conclusion here. But now, since we had good results on the Viewport before, let's go look at that. So I think, to me, by far the biggest selling point for the 9070 XT for Blender is the Viewport performance. Really, really holds up. I'm going to move Task Manager out of the way a little bit more. And then I'm going to reset this. And so again, I'm running the Vulkan backend. If you guys want to see the OpenGL, I can run that after this. Just let me know. It's definitely not as fast as Vulkan. So we're gonna just play this back. I'm gonna make sure I have frame dropping turned on. But like we saw with the other GPU, it doesn't affect the frame rate, it just affects what you see. So with frame dropping on, I'm just gonna hit play and let this thing average out, and this red number up here. So it looks like we're at about 10.7 frames per second. 10.7, yep. So that's holding on pretty good. And you can really see like how much smoother this is than the last GPU. I mean, it's probably hard to tell from your end because I'm already on such low quality stream, but basically we're 50% faster in the viewport. And it's not maxing out the viewport frame rate, but like with all this stuff turned on, it's really not going to hold you back animating. So let's just in case there's people in here that didn't see it, I'm going to turn frame dropping off. So this is on your timeline at the top left of your timeline under this playback menu. If you don't know this, it's a huge deal for working in your scene. You want to switch this sync option. So playback and then sync, you want to change it to frame dropping because here's play every frame. So basically you'll see we get the same frame rate. We're going to be at the same 10.67-ish. And it actually plays through every single frame on the timeline, which means it's going to run slower. So it's running slightly less than half of speed. Whereas if you change this to frame dropping, it will skip frames to keep the timeline moving. And you'll just only get to see however many frames it can run. And so that's what you see here. So it's a little blocky because it's skipping the frames that it can't process. But that's a game changer. It can make your otherwise good system actually seem to run well. So we're going to record 10.7. I'll turn on scene statistics here. Again, I think some of you guys are still here from the beginning, and I super appreciate that, by the way. But this is 3.15 million vertices in the scene. Not extreme, but not small. And then I'll kind of orbit around the viewport here. Definitely much more responsive than the other GPU. And you can see this obnoxious forest here. I'll turn on shaded view so you guys can see what it looks like. And basically this one runs with like a mist pass in the back, so there's kind of a foggy background to it, but that's what the scene is. And then I'll just play this back. So normally you wouldn't play back your animations with rendering turned on, but I always like to kind of do this too, especially with faster GPUs, because even at this kind of fuzzy look, you can still really get an idea of how the light's working. And it just, I don't know, it just really speaks to how fast home desktops are now. It's pretty crazy. You really don't have to wait any time at all to see what your scene looks like. But anyway, I'm going to record this one real fast. So this is about 10.7 FPS, and I think we're going to see that this was a good little jump. And so, oh, actually, hold on a second. Hold on. It looks to me like we actually got slower on the 9070 XT over the last year in the viewport test. But we got faster, barely, on the 9060. Which I think says to me, let's see what version we were on. No, it's the same. That's interesting. So yeah, mixed results. I would like to understand why that happened. So from Blender 4.4 to 5.2, both with Vulkan, I'll type that in here so no one yells at me. The Viewport got slower on the 9070 and faster on the 9060. So that one I cannot quite comprehend. So if somebody knows why that might be, let me know. Silverette says, hi, hello, welcome to the stream. If you have any comments or questions, let me know. We just ran the Viewport test and now I'm confused, so got here at a good time. Well, okay. That one could use some more investigation. I am curious now, though. Let's try, since we're already in here, let's try to switch back to OpenGL. And then I'm going to just reopen that Viewport test, and we'll see how much slower it is. Because if Vulkan is broken, it's possible that we won't really see that big of a difference. So now I'm back into Blender, but we have the OpenGL backend instead of the Vulkan one. So in theory, this should be a lot slower. Nope. Look at that. So with OpenGL on the 9070 XT, we're getting almost 12 frames per second, and we were getting 10.7 on Vulkan. And that means that Vulkan is still broken. Interesting. Sounds like the average computer experience. Yes, it is. I just rebuilt my friend's gaming computer, and now it is riddled with errors and games crashing. So it is always something with computers. Well, great. I'm gonna record this one. So apparently OpenGL is running just as fast as Vulkan or faster in Blender 5.2. At least on AMD. But I'm gonna copy this and add a line because I think that matters. So now, other than like VR, I'm not entirely sure why else you would use the Vulkan backend. Then it's supposed to be faster. Let me resort this though. So I'm going to put this OpenGL one in a nice bright AMD red here. Yeah, so OpenGL is apparently still competitive in 5.2, so I don't know what to think of that. I'm tempted to go look at the 5090 on my desktop while we're doing this because I want to know if it's broken everywhere. But yeah, man, Windows, I don't know. I think maybe we all just agreed to blame it on Windows. Historically, what's supposed to run better, Vulkan or OpenGL? I've only been using OpenGL on EV, so I have no frame of reference. Well, in the later 4.5 releases, I was getting, well, we can see it here. Like if we pick, I might have to clear off some of my colors here. If we pick basically normal comparisons, like these ones here, I'll highlight these all back in a green. So these bottom two numbers are from the OpenGL backend, and this top one is from the Vulkan backend in 5.2, and this is why it's a little confusing because these are the results that we just got. So I guess here's the other one. So yeah, this is showing Vulkan on the 9060 got slower from last year till now. But unlike the 9070 that we just tested, Vulkan is still better overall. But I guess we didn't go back and test OpenGL. So to answer your question, oh, the screen capture doesn't like that red on black. Oh, okay, good note. I will not use red. That is good to know. I'm sure the resolution and bitrate are not helping that either. So no red, no red. Make a mental note. But yeah, in theory, the Vulkan backend is supposed to be a lot faster for the Viewport. But I know around the 5.0 release, I started to get these weird numbers, and it looks like it's kind of broken right now. So I don't know. I know that OpenGL is way more stable than Vulkan, or it has been since 5.0 came out. So worst case, if you have crashes with the Vulkan backend right now, it doesn't look like it's giving a whole lot of benefit. But just revert to OpenGL. Maybe they'll have some bug fix notes about it. And I'll have to get with the Discord crew and see if anybody's researched it, but should probably submit tickets, although I imagine somebody already has has tested this. But everybody was very excited for the Vulkan backend to come out, and it seems to just kind of have problems every time they update. But okay, I'm going to get rid of this. So now we're back to Open Data Benchmark. We'll go run that one, because odds are it's going to have yet another confusing result. But this is the beauty of doing this sort of stuff on live streams. That's why I like doing it. Same with working in Blender. All of the nice, cleaned up, polished YouTube videos that you'll see leave out all of the having errors stuff that you'll probably go through if you do all of this. So I think it's good to show when everything is not perfect. If you guys missed that, I'm going to run 5.1 on the Open Data Benchmark. For whoever's new here, I tried 5.2 earlier, and it was just giving me errors. So I don't know if it's not actually like available to download yet, even though it's on the options. But I'll have to keep trying that. So I'm just going to run Open Data Benchmark on the 9070 XT. And this one just takes as long as it does. But now I'm pretty curious to see. So the other thing we can do, since we have a couple minutes to talk here, if you guys want to see the R9700, I can throw that on after this. It's going to be similar to the 9070 XT, but I know when I tested it before, it did bounce around. Like sometimes the Pro card wins and sometimes it doesn't. And I know it's not because of the VRAM, because none of these benchmarks use more than 8 gigs of VRAM. And since they have 16 or 32 between the two cards, it shouldn't matter. Silvert says, yes, please. Yeah, no, I can swap that out. And actually, I'm going to go find it because it's in one of these GPU piles around here. So I'm going to go grab that quick while this runs. It'll be just a second. Okay, I did find it. It's by the test bench, ready to go. Okay, we got our results. Isn't that a funny problem to have? Yes, it is. I will not deny that I am beyond lucky and spoiled to have all of the hardware that I do. So you'll never catch me acting like I deserve it or something, but yeah, at least I have the ability to kind of share all of this information, because when I started Blender, I really got into rendering as much as I did actually learning Blender. Okay, well, let's see how Open Data Benchmark ran. So we've got our 9060 XT down here in the green. I'll put no red, no red. I'll do maybe I'll use this blue color. I don't know if you guys can see that or if that's a problem, but looks like these are our two results. And yeah, okay, so Open Data Benchmark is consistent between these two GPUs, so that's good. The total here from today was 3,642 points, and before it was 3,140, so it's up about 500 points, which is really good. So about well, it'd be a sixth, about 16% faster. So Open Data Benchmark has a good result for AMD. So that's good. That's consistent. Those numbers make a lot more sense than the Viewport test did. Honestly, I just need a new Viewport test scene because it's got its own problems apparently. Okay, yeah. I am going to go ahead and swap over to the other card if you guys don't have any other questions for this one. Like I said, I'm going to do Unreal Engine stuff on a separate topic because I still have to get a good system for like how to record the performance, and maybe I'll get back in the Discord, and I know people have given some pointers on how to do that, but I heard they have advanced tools for performance, and so I need to just have a way for the camera to run through the scene and then record those numbers. So once I figure that out, we'll do it. But I'm going to go throw the, how did they say it? Radeon AI Pro R9700 AI. I'm going to go throw that on the test bench, and we'll run a couple of those real quick. I will be back in about 2 minutes. Okay, sorry about that. I am back. Should be booting up now. Windows decided it needed to update right now. So probably none of it'll work at all now. Needs a few more seconds. These new AMD computers take multiple minutes to train the RAM, apparently. Okay. At least it is alive. Okay, the other question will be, does the GPU need a different driver? I don't think it needs one, but we'll be able to tell pretty quick if it performs poorly, I suppose. All right. We'll close some of these extra softwares. We don't need Steam. Okay. We're going to open up 5.2 again, and we'll just go back through the same old stuff. Oh, it is going to want a different driver, isn't it? Let's see if it'll load it. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It looks like it's happy enough with the drivers. We might be okay on that. I don't remember if AMD Pro cards have problems with using the drivers or not that the gaming cards use. No, it looks like it should load. Okay. Just make sure we can get into it. Yeah, it looks good. Okay. So we're going to move this over. Make sure that one's on the chart. Yep. Okay. All right. So we've got the Radeon AI Pro R9700 AI on HIPRT. And I'm not going to switch the backend right now. We'll do it later, but this won't affect rendering. It just affects viewport playback. And we'll load that up, kill it, and then restart. And eventually I want to move the test bench to the same room so you guys can see it on a camera and you would be able to hear the cards, because I know a lot of people ask how loud they get, and I don't really know because I don't sit by them. But these blowers do definitely get a little bit louder than normal consumer GPUs. So that one was 22.3 seconds, which I think is exactly what we got on the other one. So we'll go back to classroom. But yeah, you're going to see very similar numbers for the R9700. I'll just grab these all here, throw these in. All the fun typing for the viewer's pleasure. Obviously, it's the most exciting part of any stream. Just pull these down. Do you let the fans run at full speed or keep them stock? So it depends. It's the R9700 and the Intel Arc B70 are the two that I've dealt with it lately. The Intel, well, let me think. The B70 I have and this one are both the ASRock creator models, and people complain about them in reviews a lot because they idle at really high temperatures, which I have actually experienced firsthand because um, I've run these tests, and then the first thing I do after I run them is go get the GPU off of the bench and take pictures for the video thumbnails. And multiple times I have forgot that they idle hot and grabbed them right after, and they are very, very hot to the touch. So it's a valid concern. I think the last time I ran the B70, so I didn't have to wait for the fans to spin up under load. I would just set the fan curve higher. And I know from experience, especially from back when I was GPU mining, fans are so cheap. So like if the temperatures bother you, just set the fans higher, and it's way cheaper to burn the fans out than it is to have to tear it apart and reapply paste and pads. So I would say if the sound doesn't bother you, it's better just to run the fans high. But these Pro cards definitely do idle hot, and they won't run the fans until they're under load, depending on the model. Okay, well, so classroom, we'll plug in 22 here. And sort these guys. So I'm going to use something else like yellow, so you guys can pick out the new numbers here easier. And let me know if yellow doesn't work. I know red didn't work. But yeah, I mean, this green one right above it is the other 9070 XT result from today. So basically within a second of each other. So in general, they should run at the same speed. I think a myth that they like to tell you is that the Pro GPUs are somehow faster, but they really are the same cores. And so they don't get advantages other than drivers and software stuff. But for raw performance, they just are not faster. And same thing with NVIDIA. If you're going to buy a Pro card, really dig into what the core of it is, because they tend to look faster than they are based on how they market them. I run my 7900 XT at 100% fan speed when rendering because I burned one of the memory chips before. Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, that's not what you want. Did you have it repaired? I'm curious now. Did you have the GPU repaired at a shop, or did you do it? Or did you just have to, like, RMA the thing? Because that's super interesting. I had a set of Gigabyte 3080 Ti's, and all of them, oh, you did RMA it. That's good. Okay. Yeah, because really the fan curve should be designed to protect the components, and the sensors should have been able to pick that up too. So that's a little ridiculous. But yeah, I had a whole batch of 3080 Ti's from Gigabyte that thermal pads all got hot enough to like leak oil and compress the pads, and they weren't working very well. So I repadded and pasted all, I think there were 3 of them, and they all ran much faster after that. Took 2 months to get a new one. Oof. I bet it did. Yeah. When was that too? Because if it was in the last, I don't know, year, it was probably horrible. And what brand was it? I don't know the AMD brands of GPUs as much as far as the companies. How do I manually increase the fan speed of my GPU? You can use tools like Afterburner, or for Zotac. I know Zotac has their own GPU tuning utility. I can't remember what it's called, but if you look on Zotac's website, they have like software page, and you'd be able to find it there. I used to use that. I've had multiple Zotacs over the years, and I have always had a good experience with them. But basically, you can go in there and just apply a custom profile and tell it to always reload that. And it's just a normal fan curve. They're pretty straightforward. But it's good to have that software anyway, because that's a good way to get the video BIOS or the GPU firmware. It's kind of like a, I don't know, it's just like the NVIDIA app for drivers. It's pretty straightforward. But minute 38 on the barbershop. 98 seconds. We'll sort these. And so maybe use, well, that's going to be a terrible color. I'll use a blue for the old result so you guys can see it. So this one here is from last year, actually in September. And this new one is just a little slower, it looks like, which we've seen. So these two right next to each other here are the results from today. The R9700 is 2 seconds slower than the 9070 XT, which doesn't surprise me because the 9070 XT I have is the ASRock Tai Chi, so it's a massive cooler, and it has, I believe it has a higher power allowance than the Pro card does. So, but really 2 seconds different, so it's effectively the same. And then you can see, comparing the two results just right above it, it's everything is slower in 5.2 by 5 to 8%. So that's the other takeaway here. But XFX was the brand. It happened during the time when NVIDIA had stopped producing 40 series and we're waiting for the 50s to come out. Yeah, so there's just no options. Honestly, there's been not a lot of options for quite a long time now. As a not making much money off of videos YouTuber, hardware has been a frustrating business to be in for a little bit here, which obviously everybody relates to. Okay, well, we'll go on to Lone Monk. This one will be good. This will be a good one to check temperatures on. I'm going to try to remember. RAM isn't helping. No, RAM is horrible. I am super tempted to sell off my Threadripper system because the RAM kit is not in stock and it's really hard to find 8-channel RAM kits, and they are very expensive now. All right, let's start running this. I'm tempted to sell off the Threadripper and hope to use that money to maybe get an M5 Ultra if they ever actually make it. Because I'm not going to lie, I'm as tired of Windows as most people are these days. And for just Blender, the MacBook has been insane. It's been really nice. Okay, well, we'll get this one going here. We'll watch temperatures. I think we've got it selected. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so it's not going to show it to you here. It's down at the very bottom on Task Manager, although you guys probably can't really see it. I always wish I had like a wireless camera so I could take you into the room, but as this thing runs, it's slowly building up the temperature. Right now it's at 63 Celsius, which is not horrible. Looks like it might level off, but it's in the other room. I can't hear it. It's not like screaming, but you can definitely hear those blowers when they spin up all the way. Let's see. Yeah, it's topping out at about 64, 65 Celsius, so they definitely do the job. It's not extremely hot, but it's a, 10, 15, 20 degrees hotter than the consumer model. Okay, this one is a long time. And I imagine the fans are at 100%. If you guys want, I can restart this one here in a second. We can open the driver software and see. I just don't want to throw off the test result, but we can see what the fans are doing too. I could preach for hours on how quickly I would switch to Linux if it weren't for the fact of Autodesk being Windows only. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the render computers I have are all these old Dell T3600s, and they're too old to run Windows on, at least without backdoor methods, which I don't really want to deal with. But I am probably going to switch all of those to Linux because all they have to do is run renders. But yeah, I agree with that. And I've been impressed with Mac OS. I never used Macs before last year, and I mean, just for Blender only, it's really nice. But yeah, Windows just every day has a new problem. Okay, well, this was 2 minutes and 27 seconds. 147. I'm going to put these in yellow. And so again, it's okay. So this one's 4 seconds slower than the consumer 9070 XT. So pretty similar. Basically, you're going to spend twice the money for twice the VRAM, and that's the only benefit you get unless you're using certified drivers or extra software that they only ship with the Pro cards. And I know that's a big deal with NVIDIA. I don't know if it's as big of a issue with AMD's Pro cards, but don't let them sell you Pro cards for normal uses. I'll say that much. And then what else do we have on here? Yeah, again, consistent. New results are just a little bit slower than the old results by about 4 to 6 seconds on the Lone Monk scene. So small performance decline over the last year of Blender, at least. We'll go run Scanlands. Sounds like buy secondhand for half the price. Yeah. I mean, I have bought tons and tons of used GPUs. I would say don't be too afraid of them if you can find a safe listing. But no reason to spend more. Unless the card is burned out, you can always fix pads and paste. But okay, last one here. We'll just start it up. Yeah, I was missing the time when you could buy things like the RTX A4000 for $350 because those are back up to like $1,000 now. There was a short time there when used stuff was really cheap. If I would have had the foresight to just day trade GPUs, I could have just bought those and resold them the way they were selling, but I don't think anybody would have ever expected you could buy and resell hardware for a profit. That's never been a thing. Okay. What do we got for temperatures? Yeah, it's pretty similar. 64, 65 Celsius. Nothing crazy. Yeah, I also have wanted to experiment with some AI stuff, mostly like coding, but everywhere I read makes me think that it's a lot harder to use AMD and even harder to use Intel GPUs. But I was excited for a while about all these new 32 gig cards, and they're somewhat affordable, but now it sounds like your best bet is NVIDIA still for that stuff. And so I don't know where I'm at with that all either. Oh, this one's a minute 28. Minute 28. 88 seconds. Go ahead and sort that. Highlight. Same deal. Couple seconds slower than before. Couple seconds slower than the consumer card. No big change. If nothing else, the numbers are consistent. All right. Now I'm going to load. Oh, got a comment here. Barely able to catch up on the RAM shortage. Paid $230 for 48 gigs of 8200. Yeah, I don't know. That's that sounds like a really good deal to me right now. It wasn't, but it's at least a high-speed kit. That's sounds like not a terrible deal. I had to buy some 64 gig 2-stick kits for work computers, and I think they were close to $700. But yeah, it's brutal. If only people wanted all of my old slow DDR3 from my Dells, maybe I'd get rid of those. It's $900 now for the 48 gig kit. Yeah, that's crazy. See, it's tempting to just sell off everything, but then you have nothing to use. $900 for 48 gigs. Yep. Okay. Well, so we're gonna do the viewport test. Let's just start with OpenGL, since apparently it's just as good right now. So playback, frame dropping, we'll just run it. And yep, this one's right at 12 frames per second. So we'll have 12 in case I forget it. I'm going to go throw that in. And this is 5.2 with OpenGL. Okay. I'm just going to copy that line down. And we'll do the Vulkan on this line. I'm going to be really, really confused now if magically Vulkan works better on this GPU and it did not on the other ones. At that point, I don't even know what to tell you guys about that stuff. Don't save, so I'm just gonna reload that scene. Yeah, I want to say I have a 192 gig 8-channel kit for the Threadripper. I want to say it was like $1,200 maybe when I bought it a couple years ago, and now they're, for the most part, they're just gone. You can't get them, but I've seen them on sale for like $3,500, which is absolutely insane. So I've been super, super tempted to just dump it. Okay, so here's the R9700 with Vulkan instead of OpenGL. We'll just reset it and play. And yep, it's worse. Okay, so at least that's consistent, but 10.7 frames per second. Not too exciting there. Vulkan is supposed to be a lot faster, but let's just put it in how it is. We'll sort these again. I'm going to clear off my colors here. And so we can see similar stuff. The OpenGL is winning today for some reason by 1.3 frames per second. And it's basically tying Vulkan from Blender 4.5 from September of last year. So I guess stick with OpenGL now. and see what happens in the next minor releases, if they improve it or not. But that's where we're at with Vulkan, I guess. Sold my old 32 gig DDR5 kit for 350 bucks that I bought for 90. Paid for the 20 or 270K that's in my current setup. Yeah, awesome. I mean, I think it's it was a rare opportunity to upgrade things, but I don't know that prices will crash for a while. We will have to see. But the way they talk, there may not actually be some sort of a bubble, at least not in the next foreseeable future. All right, so we'll close that, and one last time here, I'll run the Blender Open Data Benchmark 5.1. I'll keep checking this because once I can get 5.2 to run, I'll submit those results. Too bad there's nowhere to comment on Open Data Benchmark results, because then I could put first in there. But I don't think anyone can tell who submits them anyway, so it's not like it matters. But anyway, all right, well, how many people are in here? Looks like we got 5 right now. So for those of you who are in here, I did most of the streaming that I did before I got monetized on YouTube. I want to know, how does it show you ads, and is it irritating? Because I don't have any concept of how they load. So please comment on that if they're annoying. I mean, I need to try to find a way to make back some of the cost of these things, but I also don't want people to just not watch because ads pop up. So I'd like to understand how that works more so. And then as far as like content wise, I think the next video I'll probably make is going to be the RTX 5080, which I picked up at Best Buy today, and I'm gonna maybe even start filming that tonight. But I might do film and publish the video and then run some live streams as well. I just really like the live stream thing. But so that'll be the next thing, is the 5080. Let's see. It looks normal. It doesn't feel that bad for ads, is what we're talking about here. I run premium. Sorry, bro. I don't want to see ads ever. Sorry, I can't help you with that. Actually, people who pay for premium contribute more revenue to YouTubers than people that maybe watch one ad. So actually, thank you for premium, because that actually pays like some number of pennies per view. So that's not a bad thing for YouTubers at all. Okay, just grabbing a phone picture over here in the high-tech realm of my basement. Please verify. I'll do that later. Okay. And we'll go back to our spreadsheet here. But yeah, no, I mean, as far as like ads go and stuff, I don't expect people to come like feed me money or something, so I don't want to like irritate anyone. Like if I was doing this just to try to make money, then it would be a different situation. But like, if people are looking for info, they probably don't want to deal with ads in their face constantly. So I completely understand, like, they're irritating, and I just was curious because I don't really pick where they show up in the live streams. And so I'm just kind of trying to learn what the experience is like, I guess. But all right. Open data benchmark, very consistent. The R9700 was 2 points higher than the 9070 XT from tonight. So basically what you would expect. The other notable ones here. So I'm gonna plug in like $1,450. I think is close to what these go for right now. Maybe 1,500, but I like comparing these two here. The B70 is just a little bit behind the R9700. And so if you were looking at high VRAM cards for rendering, the B70 is kind of appealing. If you have to have the VRAM, I would say for other things too, but I know the software stack for AI stuff, from what I read, is terrible for Intel right now. And the last thing I want to do when I'm trying to learn something new is deal with software tricks to just get it to work. But for Blender itself, the B70 looks pretty good. And, you know, the R9700 isn't terrible, but I'm gonna have a whole video series about how to pick a GPU for Blender. And I think the main point that I'm gonna try to make is target 16 gigs of VRAM. Because really that should be enough with reasonable, you know, optimization of your scene. But yeah, I mean, $1,500 for the same price of $800 or $750. It just kind of wild to me. Basically, they're just pricing everything off of VRAM alone at this point. But anyway, any other questions for now? I think I am going to go check in with the family, and then I might start putting some stuff together for the 5080 tonight or tomorrow. So you guys will see that one pop up. 12 gigs is definitely too little. You know, I don't disagree with you. I'm so used to having more than 12. And I've had a bunch of the 4070s and 3080 Ti's and that sort of stuff on the render farm. And I will say I run into VRAM full errors with the render farm with 12 gig GPUs. So I think 12 is pushing it. I think you can do some pretty light work with 12 and not have any problems. But yeah, I mean, once you start getting like realistic scenes at all, it's going to push it. And I think 16 might be a sweet spot for, you know, not selling your organs or like, you know, mortgaging your house just to buy a GPU. But there's somewhere in that close to 20 is probably a good number. But yeah, we'll dig into it as time goes on, and you know, some of these new texture compression methods maybe will help with that too. I'm excited to see 5.3 with DLSS in the viewport. Lumion uses between 15 and 17 gigs for rendering. Just always. I mean, that's crazy. Like, it doesn't have to be a certain complex scene or anything like that. I suppose some engines just have a lot of overhead too, though. But yeah, it's tough, and that's why I like that APUs are going to be more competitive, and especially the Mac ones. And everyone can yell at me, but I'm going to end up dying on that sword because the basically combined memory. I mean, the limits of the VRAM issue go away when the APU has access to everything. So, I mean, yeah, 64 gig MacBook is incredibly expensive, but it's also portable. So that's why I'm hoping they have, that's why I hope they have their studios come out soon. But, so if you have, yeah, so if you have under the 15 to 17 gig of VRAM, then you can't run it. Normally, yeah. Yeah, so okay, so for scenes that I've made and for their own demo scenes that use that much VRAM. Yeah, see, so like that is one problem though. If you know you need it, you have to have it. So like in Blender, there's a bunch of ways to reduce how much VRAM you need. You can optimize, and that takes a lot of time. So you have to kind of weigh the how much time do you want to optimize versus how much do you want to just spend to get more VRAM. But for a lot of engines, yeah, if you don't have enough VRAM, you just don't run it. And it's not like in the older days of Blender, like prior to Blender 4, I think, where you could tile in a more controlled way. And you still can. You can set the tile size, but back in the day, you could split it up into little tiny tiles, and it really wasn't a problem. It just ran slow. But yeah, it's tough. And like with optics in Blender, you can't use memory overflow, so you can't use fallback to system RAM. And on CUDA, you can. So it just really depends on the engine. But in Lumion, the render slows down exponentially. Yeah, so if you're out of VRAM, you're either not going to run it or it's going to do some sort of... Well, what does it do? I bet it does run memory fallback then, doesn't it? So it probably overflows into the system RAM, and then that's going to be way slower than being able to use the VRAM. Yeah, I've never run any Lumion. That's the other problem with all this stuff, is there's just so many different softwares. It's hard to like answer all the questions I get because a lot of them I've never even used. But I reached out to a few companies at one point to try to get free licenses just for testing, and none of them replied to me, so there's that. Like Autodesk never even replied, which I guess I don't blame them, but anyway, well, yeah, thanks for being here, guys. I think I'm gonna cut it off here. And don't forget about the Discord. I know some of you are already in there. And it's kind of a nice, easy way to, get more into the weeds on stuff. But yes, on NVIDIA, Lumion falls back. On AMD, the system shut down entirely. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's all dependent on the engine. Yeah, and same thing in Blender too, though. If you overflow VRAM on an AMD GPU, it just doesn't run. There is no system RAM fallback. I think there was a long time ago prior to HIP. I want to say that it might have used fallback on OpenGL, but that was never fast anyway. And back then, I think that would have been when the RX 580 maybe was newer. And so I think they even had problems running it all in Blender for the most part. But yeah, it depends on the render engine and how well the software is supported. But a lot of variables, a lot of softwares. Too much to know. I have another question, but I'll send it on the Discord. Yeah, either way. You know how to get a hold of me. It's whichever way. I can wait as long as people have questions. All right. Well, thanks guys. We'll see you on the next one, and always reach out if you have questions or if you have a good idea. Yeah, you have a good night too. I appreciate you guys. Thanks.